I've learned something about life, something people don't like to admit. It never destroys you suddenly. It warns you first. Not with thunder, not with flames, not with dramatic signs. No, life whispers, softly, subtly, like a hairline crack forming inside a glass you've held your whole life. You don't notice it at first. You just feel the slightest change in weight, the smallest imbalance. You ignore it, because why would the glass you drink from every day suddenly betray you? I used to think betrayal came in explosions. Turns out, it comes in drips. Tiny drops of poison in a glass of clean water. You don't see the poison, you just taste something bitter one day and wonder when the sweetness disappeared. My name is Aries. I'm 32, a mechanical engineer. The kind of man who believes in logic, patterns, stability. The kind of man who builds things with his hands and trusts what he can see. I don't fall in love easily, not because I'm cold, but because I need to understand things. And love? Love is the one thing that has never made sense to me. Until Mina. Mina was soft where I was hard, gentle where I was rigid. A woman who smiled with her whole face, who laughed like the world wasn't constantly trying to crush her. She made me feel safe. Like maybe, just maybe, love didn't need to be understood. It just needed to be felt. When we met, everything felt effortless. Late-night drives where the city blurred into streaks of gold and black. Her head leaning on my shoulder as she told me stories she'd never told anyone else. Me cracking dry jokes and her laughing like I was the funniest man alive. But there was one thing about her, one thing I didn't see clearly until later. She needed validation, constantly, like oxygen. Every compliment was a sip of air. Every reassurance was a heartbeat. Every second of attention was proof she still existed. Back then, I told myself it was because of her childhood. Strict parents, a perfectionist mother who treated affection like a reward. I thought Mina just needed healing. I didn't realize she needed an audience. Our marriage was simple, predictable, a middle-class routine built on early alarms and late returns. She worked from home, freelance graphic design. I'd leave at dawn, return exhausted, eat dinner, watch something forgettable on TV, and go to bed. Nothing extraordinary, but peaceful, comfortable. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, the cracks were there long before the disaster came. Little things. Her suddenly becoming moody for no reason. Her eyes drifting away while I was talking, as if my words no longer reached her. Her flinching when I touched her sometimes, then clinging to me the very next day. One moment sticks with me, clearly, sharply, like a shard of glass buried under my skin. We were watching a movie, some drama about a couple raising a child that wasn't biologically the husband's. She turned to me and asked, "What would you do if a child wasn't yours?" I laughed, a stupid, careless laugh. I thought she was just curious about the plot. But she asked again, and this time, her voice trembled. I shrugged it off. I had no idea that she wasn't asking about the movie. She was rehearsing. As time passed, her social life expanded. More outings with friends whose names I'd never heard before. More makeup when she left the house. More secrecy around her phone. Turning it face down, taking it with her even when she showered. Anyone else would have suspected something, but I didn't. Not because I was stupid, but because I trusted her. I trusted the woman I married. Then came the shift. She started talking about wanting a child, casually at first, then obsessively. At first, I felt flattered, wanted, chosen. But something was off. Something in the timing. Something in the way she pushed the topic. Like she was desperate. Not excited desperate. More like racing against a deadline desperate. I wasn't ready. Finances were tight. Work was stressful. But she looked at me with those large, pleading eyes and said she wanted our love to grow into something tangible. And I, like a fool, agreed. The first few weeks of trying were strange. She became overly affectionate, not romantic, almost strategic. Clingy in bed, always initiating intimacy, showering me with compliments, acting like the perfect wife. But outside the bedroom, she was distant, distracted, lost in thoughts I was never invited into. I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that guilt has a rhythm. It makes people oscillate, one moment loving, the next absent, one moment attentive, the next whispering to someone else from the bathroom. I tried to be understanding, tried to convince myself it was just stress. Maybe she was afraid she couldn't conceive. Maybe that's why she pushed so hard. Maybe that's why she cried when I hesitated. I blamed myself. Work kept me away. I didn't give her enough time. I thought a child might bring us closer. I thought love could fix anything. And then her family added their pressure. Her mother with her backhanded comments about a real man providing stability. Her younger brother with his unsolicited advice about securing a wife before she loses interest. Every word chipped away at me. Every judgment made me feel smaller, inadequate, unworthy. So when Mina showed me the pregnancy test, positive, 2 pink lines staring at me like mocking eyes, I froze. She smiled, but it wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It was something else, something that felt wrong, too rehearsed, too triumphant. I hugged her anyway, held her, told her we'd get through it together. But inside, deep, deep inside, a cold whisper rose. The timing doesn't make sense. A whisper I tried to silence, a whisper I tried to drown with hope, a whisper I didn't yet understand. That strange smile she gave me, that wasn't the beginning of our family. That was the beginning of my destruction and my revenge. People talk about pregnancy like it's a miracle, like it softens a woman, makes her glow, makes the world inside her gentle and sacred. But Mina didn't glow. She dimmed. After the positive test, I expected warmth, excitement, maybe a little fear. What I got instead was volatility, mood swings sharper than knives. One moment she clung to me like she was drowning. The next, she recoiled as if my touch burned her. She started needing space, long walks alone, naps that lasted hours, showers that went on too long. And the strangest part? She avoided every conversation about when it happened. Every time I mentioned the conception week, our intimacy, the exact timing, she shut down. She'd change the topic, start a fight, cry, blame hormones, press her palm against her stomach like a shield. I kept telling myself it was pregnancy anxiety, that she was overwhelmed, that I needed to be patient. But patience feels a lot like self-deception when you're living with a lie you haven't seen yet. The phone was the next shift. She started carrying it everywhere, even to the bathroom, even while brushing her teeth. And she typed, constantly, her thumbs moving like they were racing against guilt. Whenever I walked behind her, she'd angle the screen away. Whenever it buzzed, she'd snatch it before the second vibration. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself trust meant not snooping. I told myself love required believing her. Then one night, her phone lit up while she was asleep. A message preview. Just one sentence. I'm stressing out. He suspects something. It was saved under a woman's name, but the tone wasn't female. Not even close. My stomach twisted into a fist. I stared at that line so long it burned into my brain. When she woke up, she was agitated, restless, snapping at me for breathing too loud. She had no idea her lie had already cracked open. That was the beginning of my unraveling. Sleep became impossible. I would lie next to her at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of something I didn't yet have proof of. The kind of suspicion that eats you from the inside, silently, leaving you hollow with a smile on your face. My hands shook at work.
I'd stare at my phone waiting for some new message to appear on hers, even though I didn't have access to it. My mind was a storm I couldn't calm. I started watching more closely. Bank statements, a timeline of secrets, late-night food deliveries on days she claimed she skipped dinner, Uber receipts to places she never mentioned, mysterious charges, hotels, short-stay places, right around the time she started pushing for a baby. And then I remembered those work trips 2 months before she got pregnant. Trips I never questioned because trust makes you blind in the most convenient ways. I tried to confront her once, gently, without accusations. She exploded, accused me of paranoid, controlling, toxic. She cried so hard she made herself nauseous. She said pregnancy was already stressful, and now I was hurting the baby with my...
She didn't see it. The change. My pain had gone quiet, silent, cold. She thought she fooled me. But something inside me had already died. And something else, something darker, had finally woken up. I woke up the next morning different. Not healed, not recovered, not even calm in a healthy way, but clear. There's a strange kind of silence that settles over you when your heart finally accepts the truth your mind has been screaming for weeks. It's like the moment after an explosion, dust floating, ears ringing, nothing left but stillness, and the realization that the world you knew is gone. That's how I felt when I opened my eyes beside Mina. She was asleep, curled away from me as usual, but for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel abandoned. I didn't feel like a begging dog waiting for scraps of affection. I felt awake. And in that awakening, a thought crystallized so sharply it almost made me smile. She thinks she's smarter than me. That was the moment something inside me shifted from victim to predator. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't rage or cry or crumble. She expected all that, expected the emotional chaos of a man terrified of losing his family. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. If she wanted a performance, I would give her one. If she wanted to believe she could control me, I'd let her keep believing. If she wanted to play games behind my back, I would be the one writing the rules now. The first step in revenge is observation, and I became an expert observer. I watched her patterns the way a hunter studies an animal before the strike, not out of love, not out of curiosity, out of necessity. Every morning, she woke up and touched her belly, as if reminding herself of the prison she was trying to lock me into. Every afternoon, she stayed glued to her phone, smiling secretly at the screen. Every evening, she'd be strangely irritated by the smallest things, like she was juggling too many lies. And every Thursday, like clockwork, she left the house at 4:15 p.m. for prenatal yoga. That schedule was so perfect, so rehearsed, it practically begged to be questioned. So I followed her. Not closely, not stupidly, from far enough that she would never notice. I parked across the street from the cafe she walked into. Yes, a cafe, not a yoga studio, and waited. Then he appeared. The man she was willing to ruin our marriage for. The man she was willing to get pregnant with. The man she was planning to make me financially responsible for. He was older than me by maybe a few years, taller, with that polished confidence men get when they've lived their whole lives being praised for nothing. He looked like someone who cheated simply because it was Tuesday. He walked with his chest out, shoulders back, wedding ring glinting in the sun, a ring he clearly didn't value. He saw her before she saw him, and he smiled with a softness that made my blood run cold. She melted into him. Not physically, but emotionally. You can tell when someone's heart leaps toward another person. I watched him touch her belly. I watched her let him. I watched her smile, nervous and adoring.
My hands clenched so hard I felt my nails bite into my palms, but I did not move. I had no intention of exposing myself. I needed her to feel safe, safe enough to keep being reckless, because reckless people are easy to destroy. After that day, I studied everything. Her messages, saved previews, her bank activity, food orders she never ate with me, Uber trips, addresses that didn't belong to any friends, her calendar, blocked out hours she never explained. I didn't tell her I knew. In fact, I became sweeter. I became calmer. I became the version of a husband she wanted me to be. She relaxed into the fantasy. To her, I was becoming the man she could manipulate into signing the birth certificate, the man she could emotionally attach to a child that wasn't mine, the man she could secure her future with. She didn't know she was feeding a wolf. I contacted a lawyer, anonymously, told him a friend had a cheating wife. He listened, then said something that lit a fire inside me. If the child isn't yours, you're free, but only if you protect yourself before signing anything. Her emotional manipulation won't matter if you move early and legally. That sentence rerouted the entire roadmap of my life. She wasn't trying to keep our marriage alive. She was trying to lock me into raising another man's child, into paying for it, into building a future she'd ruined long before I even saw the cracks. Everything became clear. Every tear she shed was strategy. Every apology was performance. Every gentle touch was a calculated attempt to anchor me emotionally. Every "I love us, don't you?" was insurance. I played along. I stroked her hair. I held her hand in public. I kissed her forehead when she complained about stress. Inside, I felt nothing but decay. But outside, I was perfect. The moment that solidified my transformation happened by accident. I was researching the man she met, the muscular, ring-wearing coward with soft eyes and a guilty smile. It wasn't hard. Cheaters are rarely cautious online. They think they're invincible. I found his full name, his workplace, his social media. And then I found her, his wife. A woman glowing in a pregnancy announcement photo. A woman carrying his legitimate child. A woman whose timeline matched Mina's almost to the week. The realization hit me like a cold blade sliding between my ribs. He had 2 pregnant women at the same time, and both women believed in different futures with him. I stared at their photos, him hugging his wife, smiling like the world was perfect, unaware of the storm brewing at the edge of his comfortable life. That's when the final piece of my revenge clicked into place. Because now, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I wasn't just destroying a marriage that had already died. I wasn't just denying them the future they tried to force on me. I was holding a grenade with 4 people in the blast radius. Me, Mina, the man, his wife. And I finally understood something that had been forming silently in the back of my mind. When you're betrayed at this depth, when someone tries to poison your life, your identity, your bloodline, revenge stops being an option. It becomes a responsibility, a duty, a correction of the universe. So I began designing the blueprint. Not a fight, not a confrontation, not a dramatic shouting match. No, a destruction. Quiet, complete, multi-layered, legal, emotional, financial, and social. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to dismantle, piece by silent piece. And I ended that night staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself, I will walk out of this clean, and every single person who played a part in this betrayal will pay for it in full. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to destroy my wife. I built it, slowly, deliberately, brick by brick, like an architect designing a monument made entirely of consequences. Revenge isn't anger. Revenge is precision. And once I crossed the point of no return, I understood something terrifyingly empowering. They had no idea how smart I could be when pushed. No idea how patient. No idea how cold. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was planning an extinction. The first step was information. People underestimate how loud their secrets become when you stop reacting emotionally. When you just watch. When you let them think everything is normal. I bought 2 discreet cameras, nothing fancy, just enough to do the job. One went behind a ceramic vase in the living room, angled perfectly toward the front door. The other I tucked between her sketchbooks in her home office. She always kept her phone glued to her hand, but she never imagined the walls could be listening too. And then I upgraded the car surveillance. Her car, our car, had a glove compartment that had always jammed slightly when closing. So I hid an old phone inside, put it on airplane mode, opened the voice recording app, and slid the compartment shut. It caught everything. I learned the subtle rhythm of her betrayal, the soft click whisper of her leaning against the door as she told him she missed him, the breathless tremor in her voice when she told him she was terrified Aras might figure out the timeline, the stupid giggle she only made with him, not me, the discussions about how to hide the affair until the baby was born, the panic in her voice when she said, "What if the baby looks like you instead of him?"
And when I looked at the entire structure, every detail, every step, every angle, I realized something. This wasn't just a plan. This wasn't even revenge. It was justice. Cold, precise, inevitable. And by the time I was done, every lie they told would bury them. I remember the day she went into labor. It was strange how calm I felt. Most men panic, rush around, call relatives, pray, cry, celebrate. But me? I walked around the house like I was getting ready for work. I grabbed my keys, locked the door behind her, and drove us to the hospital in absolute silence. She kept wincing through contractions, saying, "Aries, please don't leave me today. Please stay with me." And I nodded with a small smile, the kind you give to someone you no longer recognize. Inside the hospital, they put her in the delivery room. Nurses rushed in and out, machines beeped. She squeezed my hand like she wanted to crush my bones. And I let her. I let her feel like I was there, like I cared, like I was still the husband she thought she could manipulate. But inside, I felt hollow, detached, like I was watching someone else's movie. Hours passed. The pain got worse. She started screaming, sobbing, begging. She kept whispering, "Please don't hate me. Please don't leave me. This baby needs you." And every time she said, "this baby," something inside me twisted, not in sadness, not in fear, but in anticipation, because I knew the truth she had been hiding, and today there would be no running from it. When the baby finally arrived, the room buzzed with chaos, nurses moving quickly, doctors speaking in trained rhythms. And then they handed the child to her. I didn't have to look long. One glance. One single, tiny glance. And the truth hit harder than any punch I've ever taken. This child looked nothing like me. Nothing. Different complexion, different features, different bloodline. It was like looking at a stranger's child being placed into my life by force. Meanwhile, Mina watched me with eyes that begged for a miracle. She kept trying to read my expression. She kept searching for something, anything, that would tell her I believed the lie, that I would swallow my doubts and play father to the product of her betrayal. But I had already rehearsed this moment. When the nurse brought the birth certificate documents, pen clipped neatly on top, I didn't even hesitate. I looked the nurse dead in the eye, and with a voice so steady it shocked even me, I said, "I won't be signing anything until a DNA test is done." Silence. Pure,
Heavy, suffocating silence dropped across the room like a guillotine blade. The nurse blinked. The doctor paused. And Mina? She collapsed into panic. "What? Arise, no! No, please, I'm begging you, don't do this!" Her voice cracked, her face drained of color. She clutched the sheets like she was falling off a cliff. The nurse stepped out, uncomfortable. The doctor looked away, pretending to scroll through something on a clipboard. But I stayed still, unmoved, cold. She tried everything: shame, guilt, tears, hormonal excuses. "You're embarrassing me. You're humiliating our family. You're hurting your own child. You know stress after birth is dangerous. Please, please don't do this today." I didn't flinch. Hospital policy allowed it. All I had to do was request it before signing anything. And I did. The test was taken. A swab. Simple. Ridiculously simple for something that would destroy her entire fantasy. Afterward, she lay in bed trembling, face wet with tears, hair stuck to her skin, breathing uneven. "Please, we can talk. We can fix this. Don't do this to us." She tried to hold my hand. I pulled it away. For the next 24 hours, I stayed in the hospital, but I was a ghost. I sat in the corner. I answered no questions. I comforted no one. I stared at the wall and listened to her cry herself dry. And then the results came. The doctor walked in with a sealed envelope. She already looked uncomfortable, like she wished someone else had drawn the short straw. Mina reached for my hand again. I let it hang in the air between us. The doctor opened the paper, read it, closed her eyes for a moment, then said the words I already knew. "You are not the father." Mina's scream wasn't even human. It was raw, animalistic, like something breaking inside her ribcage. She tried to stand, tried to reach me, tried to explain, but her legs gave out. She sobbed into her hands, shaking violently. I stepped back. I didn't say a word, not the single sentence. I just turned around and walked out of the room, leaving her collapsed on the floor. And that's when everything began. The moment I stepped out of the hospital doors, I took out my phone and pressed send. Just one button, one tap, and weeks of preparation detonated like synchronized explosions. Emails, screenshots, voice recordings, everything. They went out to her family, her closest friends, her workplace, my family, and most importantly, the wife of her affair partner. At the exact same moment, the other wife walked into her husband's office and confronted him in front of HR, his colleagues, and even his department head. Evidence in hand, all courtesy of me. My phone lit up instantly. Her mother called, screaming. Her brother sent threats. Family friends fired angry messages at her. Her social reputation died in minutes. Meanwhile, the affair partner was dragged out of his workplace by security as his wife hurled every piece of evidence at him. HR launched a misconduct investigation. His relatives disowned him. His wife filed for divorce before the sun even set. I didn't respond to a single call or message. I blocked everyone, every single one. Then I returned to the hospital, not to see Mina, not to comfort her, but to deliver one final strike. I walked into her room, where she sat holding the baby, swollen eyes, face pale, broken beyond words. Her mother stood beside her, glaring at me, but too stunned to speak. I placed the divorce papers on the table. She stared at them like they were a death sentence. Her mother shouted at me, but I simply handed her the printed DNA results. She froze. Her rage dissolved into shock, and I walked out again. As for the affair partner, his life unraveled exactly how he deserved. Suspended from work, humiliated publicly, divorced, disowned, financially crippled. I didn't have to lift a finger beyond orchestrating their truth. They destroyed themselves with their own lies. I only removed the mask. And the night after everything blew apart, after Mina lost me, after her affair partner lost his family, after their 2 lives burned to ash. I slept. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. When I finally moved out of the house we once called ours, the silence followed me like a shadow. Not a peaceful silence, but the kind that presses against your chest, reminding you that something has died. Not someone, something. An illusion, a dream, a version of love that I swore was real. I remember standing in the empty living room, looking at the faint imprint where our sofa used to be, the ghost of our life together. I ran my fingers along the walls and realized something painful. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was mourning the woman I thought she was, the version of her I built in my head, the one who never existed. And grief is strange. You don't cry because you lost the person. You cry because you lost the lie you wanted to believe. For a while, that realization hit harder than anything else. Betrayal tears you apart, but disillusionment, that leaves you hollow. But somewhere inside that hollow space, something else was forming. A strange, sharp sense of liberation, power, a rebirth I didn't ask for, but desperately needed. I spent the first few weeks in a kind of emotional limbo. Therapy helped me process the chaos swirling in my head. My therapist was patient, quiet but piercing. She told me something I didn't want to hear. You didn't just lose a wife. You lost the version of yourself that was willing to love blindly. She was right, and losing that version of myself was the real wound. But I didn't break. I rebuilt, slowly. I reconnected with old friends, people I had ghosted unintentionally because marriage had swallowed my time and, in hindsight, my identity. They welcomed me back without questions. They didn't care about the scandal, the drama, or the whispers. They cared about me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I started exercising again, not to escape the pain, but to rediscover what strength felt like when it wasn't being drained by someone else's deception. At night, I slept, deeply, fully, without waking up at 3 a.m. to check her phone, or wonder where she really was, or who she was talking to. My dreams stopped being war zones. My mornings stopped being interrogations. For the first time in years, I felt like myself. And yet, healing isn't a clean line. Some days, trauma returns like an old enemy.